Are we on?
Oh, sorry.
Right.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to our Monday. It is Monday.
It is Monday.
Gosh. Yeah, Monday live stream. We're coming to you live from Intrepid Studios, and we're pretty excited today to have a special guest with us. He's going to be asking some questions of us for Ashes of Creation, Mr. Robert Lashley. Lashley, right? Lashley?
Yes, it is.
Welcome to the stream, my friend. We're happy to have you. Excited to hear some of your questions.
Thanks, I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, so we're having a pretty awesome time still on Kickstarter. We're almost at 13,000 backers.
Real close, getting real close.
Just a few hundred off.
Pretty
We've
crazy.
passed the $2.25 million mark with 10 days remaining.
I think that puts us,
It does put us technically
at number one.
at number one Kickstarter.
Yeah.
Kickstarter, yes. Number one Kickstarter project, so congratulations.
For MMOs.
For
MMOs.
MMORPGs,
Yeah.
excuse me, MMORPGs, absolutely. MMORPGs that start with A.
Yeah.
Just kidding. No, huge
Which is really
congratulations.
cool. Oh my
Yes, that
God.
is awesome. We're really excited about it. We can't thank everybody out there enough for the amount of support that you've given our project. We're dedicated and excited to bring this amazing game to you guys. And we got 10 days to go, so let's hit that new race and economic stretch goal. Yeah, pretty excited. So, Robert, you have been hopefully following the project and have a pretty good idea of what we're doing. We're excited to hear some questions that you have for us.
All right, I have, and congratulations. This morning when I checked, you guys were about $220 short of Camelot Unchained, but I kind of figured you guys would end up eclipsing that by the time we talked. So that does put you at number one, and I don't know if you
amazing.
I don't know if you realize it or not, but even if you wanted to lump Star Citizen in with that, while they did get to 34,000 backers, they only had 2.1 million when they were on
Yes.
Kickstarter. So
Hear how incredible you guys are?
That
like
is
how
amazing.
totally incredible you are.
yeah, so that's
pretty awesome.
that's good.
Robert, tell us a little bit about what you do and who you're associated with. I'm sorry, MMORPG.com. What is it? That MMORPG.com, it's a stream, right?
Okay, so MMORPG.com is, I would actually venture to say, it's probably the world's premier website on the MMORPG genre. It's been around for at least the last 12 or 13 years. I believe it started off as a fan site for people to go and bitch about Star Wars Galaxies.
Wait, there's a key word there. What
I
was
remember
word?
that. I remember that. I was there for that.
Complain about their favorite MMO at the time. Eventually, and then I'd say about, it's well over 10 years, 12 years, 13 years ago now when EverQuest 2 and World of Warcraft basically launched at the same time.
The same time.
Yeah, like the EverQuest 2 people hung out at MMORPG.com. That was their safe place. I guess that's the current vernacular. So that was their safe place to go and complain about SOE because they were all Star Wars Galaxy people there anyways too. So it's kind of evolved since then. I've been involved with the website for a little over 5 years now. Mostly written, been on developer streams before. Did a lot of interviews with developers on aging MMOs.
Nice.
The first one was with like Age of Conan when they hit their 5-year anniversary. Did a lot of stuff with EverQuest 2. I hosted a monthly stream with Dark Age of Camelot.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
That's a
so
good game.
every month we went through on all 3 of the factions from the beginning to the end and spent 5 months with each faction going through the
that's cool.
different RVR lakes and seeing the different perspectives of the factions at the different level brackets that would fall into those different RVR lakes. So that was a good time. A lot of written work. Up until recently, I had a weekly column, and now I'm just kind of doing some stuff of my own, but still contributing there and hosting these developer interviews and things like that.
Very cool. Awesome. Well, we're glad to have you. That's a
Sure.
pretty extensive history.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Yeah, I've done quite a few of these developer interviews during Kickstarters with Camelot Unchained. I think was probably the first one when Mark Jacobs was getting ready to announce theirs. Talked to Richard Garriott when they did Shroud of the Avatar. I did not talk to anybody during the most recent one for I almost said Camelot Unchained. Crowfall. But other than that, I've talked to just about everyone that's come down the pipe in the last 5 years. And you guys are the most
very
recent
cool.
and the most successful to this point that I've got to talk to. And I also talked to Pathfinder, and, well, unfortunately, that became what it is.
Such a great tabletop RPG, though.
It is wonderful. It is a wonderful system. It's great. It's a great IP, and hopefully they can find somebody to do it justice one day. Unfortunately, Ryan just wasn't able to do
I love
it.
Pathfinder tabletop RPG.
Yep.
But I don't think you do like Pathfinder.
I mean,
you're a D&D guy.
Right.
You like 5th edition.
Yeah.
Right?
I'm a huge
What are
5th
you?
edition fan. I
I'm
run a
everybody.
game twice a week.
I am system agnostic. If it's a fun game, I'm going to play it.
Okay,
So
got it. Oh, I think you call Pathfinder Magefinder.
Yeah.
Magefinder,
I
okay.
think that's slipped a few times.
It's an interesting system, but anyways, I guess we're not here to talk about tabletop gaming, even though it is wonderful and it paved the path. It paved the path for MMORPGs. I mean, we wouldn't have it MMOs if it wasn't for MUDs and pen and paper RPGs. So, thanks to people like E. Gary Gygax and Dave Arnett and all those guys. But it's actually really nice to. And speaking of MMORPG.com, it's great to see you guys lean into the term MMORPG in an age where a lot of developers, especially AAA space developers, are shying away from the label.
yeah.
Right. No, that's so true. I think they're shying away from the label because the industry, the genre, has moved into a territory that hasn't seen very good performance with some of the latest developments.
Yeah, blaming it more on the tag rather than the game.
Yeah,
which
that
is
doesn't
kind of,
seem like it makes sense to me. I think that if we get back to what made the MMORPG genre so great, that's where we're going to see the revival come from.
Absolutely.
That's why we're embracing that term.
That's awesome. So, anyways, before we get into like the nuts and bolts of the game, since you guys are on Kickstarter and you're seeking funding, I thought it was only best if we started off with a couple questions that did involve the money. So when you come to Kickstarter asking for crowdfunding, there's always the expectation that you should be more transparent with your finances to the public than if you were in a traditional developer or financier relationship, whether that's a dev publisher, dev, private funding. As such, I feel that it's, potential backers out there that want to donate to your project have the feeling that they should know how you plan on treating their money. So let's go ahead and ask maybe some of the not so fun questions, and then we'll dive into like the gameplay questions.
Hey, I love finances. Those are fun to me.
Hey, I've got an MBA in finance, so that's what I like to do too.
Nice. Very cool.
So you say that you have enough funding for a core viable product. And in the Valley, core is a synonym for a minimum viable product. So what's your standard for the CVP that you guys could release, even if it wasn't with the Kickstarter? Because we've heard a lot of promises from high-profile MMORPGs in the past that have maybe gone to Kickstarter, that they'd release an MVP and they'd iterate on that with crowdforging, and it didn't quite turn out so well.
Right. So for me, the difference between the term minimally viable product and core viable product is that when I hear a developer say minimally viable product, I don't think that they're going to be coming to market with everything necessarily they've discussed and wanted to have. Whereas for us, a core viable product includes all of the mechanics that we've discussed, all of the systems we've discussed, the node system, the monster coin system, the economy, the regional marketplaces. A core viable product, when we're discussing the product that we have funding to produce, includes all of those systems we've discussed. The Kickstarter was for expanding those systems and making them more integrated into each other and the different pillars, as well as allowing us now to include stretch goals and stretch backer goals that include and add on to the existing game, the core viable game, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
So you did mention on your website or on the Kickstarter that you guys have 40 years combined experience across the team. And while that seems like a large number, when you take it to 13 employees, it's a big number in aggregate, but when you average it out, it's only like 3 years per person, which isn't a ton. So why?
Yeah. So hold on. I'm sorry. So the funny thing about our Kickstarter video was that it was not scripted.
Okay.
It was actually off the cuff. So when I said 40 years, we actually
that's 40 years of MMO experience,
exactly.
Not game development experience.
Game development experience, we actually have 96 years, or above 96 years in combined game industry experience.
Okay,
so that was we have a couple people here. I've got almost 15 years now.
Right.
Jason's got 15 years.
Michael has 20.
Kevin
has 20.
Right.
David has 10. We've got 12 years with Tristan.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
There's Michael.
that ups my comfort level from about here to about there. So that's a lot better. 96 over 40 aggregate out, still 7 somewhere in there, but it's a lot better than 3.
40 of those years were specifically MMORPGs.
Okay. So And this one's going to tie a little bit into that. So I saw a lot of leads and seniors on the Kickstarter, and that was more concerning when you thought that a leads and a senior might have only had 3
years.
But so you guys are at about close to 2.5. We'll just say it's 2.5 million. A lot of Kickstarters get a big surge at the end, so I legitimately think that you guys have the opportunity to hit 3 million. So who's in charge of keeping you guys on the budget, and what type of experience do they have? I mean, I didn't see really any producer role or a senior producer. We saw more like design and art, but not really the production side of the game.
Well, interestingly enough, actually, we're probably going to see a press release in the very near future in regards to that specific position as a producer. Up until now, I mean, a lot of the work here in the studios was pipeline production for art assets, engineering work on the back-end code of UE4, the technical artist stuff, animations, getting the world built from a level design standpoint so we have this large open world, character effects and all that kind of stuff. The position of keeping everybody on budget and keeping a timeline for stuff has kind of been mine and Jeffrey's.
Yeah, it's been a combination of both of us.
Yeah.
I've been on the business side of game studios before, and it's something that I've always been really plugged into. I can give Steven a very good estimate on how long things take to build, what pipelines are the most expensive, what we need to focus our work on at this moment versus a year down the line, that kind of thing. So,
and I think that you see the quality of that performance here between the two of us in regards to coming to Kickstarter after 15 months, what we've been able to show in relation to what other Kickstarters have shown. And I mean, I'm biased, I guess, but I believe we've shown a lot more than what other projects have come to Kickstarter with.
Yeah, and I would definitely agree with that, and that's why I think that you guys are at the dollar value that you're at, whereas known developers have come to Kickstarter before and not been able to fund their project because they came with ideas and pictures where you guys have come with some alpha footage, and everybody's got ideas. Ideas are a dime a dozen, and not to be trite or reductive, but if someone comes to you and is like, oh, I got an idea, well, that's great. Can you put a pen to paper and actually put something in production and get something made? And that's what you guys have been able to kind of demonstrate. That said, to try to compare it to another Kickstarter, because why wouldn't we? But this is the last one I'll ask about dollars and cents before we start asking about games. All right, so Camelot Unchained, Mark Jacobs came to Kickstarter. He was asking for $2 million and said, hey, if you give me $2 million, I'm going to throw $3 million of my own money in with it. So you guys are asking individuals to contribute upwards of $10,000 a piece towards this project. So that's a significant chunk of change, no matter who you are. How much of your own money have you put towards this project?
In total, coming to Kickstarter, I believe I've put in almost $2 million, just about $2 million into the project. So it was more along the lines. It was kind of reversed there, I guess, between the Camelot and us. It was more along the lines of, hey, I'm putting in $2 million, and then above and beyond that. That was just before Kickstarter. Whether or not Kickstarter saw the success that we've seen so far, because we've resonated with a lot of people out in the MMORPG community and presenting Ashes of Creation as a viable divert from the course that the MMORPG genre has been going. I'm committed to funding the core viable product, which is going to be upwards of probably around $30 to $35 million.
I think it's great that you answered that question and didn't just try and dodge it, because it goes to show the community out there, at least, if nothing else, that you actually have your own skin in this game. Because regardless of how many millions you do have, $2 million isn't just something you're going to find laying on a street corner one day. Like, oh, it's okay. I can lose $2 million. That's no big deal.
Right. Yeah, no, I mean, for me personally, Ashes of Creation is 100% a passion project. I mean, I got started very early in business at 15, creating an advertising and marketing company, and then I moved in at 18 years old into operating an online website that sold nutritional and vitamins. And then at around 24 years old, I kind of moved into real estate and investments, and that's where I made a large majority of my success was through real estate and investments. And over the past few years, prior to starting Ashes of Creation and Intrepid Studios, I had really just kind of retired and kind of sat back and played video games, which is what I'd always done throughout my entire life. And when I was playing video games, I was playing MMORPGs. And I just got so frustrated with what was available that, I was Is that the ice cream truck again?
It is.
Oh my gosh.
Sorry.
Why do
He's
they
got you
come at
timed
this
to interrupt your
time?
streams. He knows what's up.
Sorry. Sorry. So I mean, I really just got so frustrated with what was available that I decided, I'm going to get together this amazing team, and I'm gonna build the perfect MMO and move away from this pay-to-win, cash grab, just non-inclusive stuff that's been coming out.
Low risk stuff.
Right, exactly.
It's where I think one of the cool things is that we can take a lot of risks here, and that's all been enabled by Steven. And
You can do that when you don't have a board to walk in.
right, exactly.
If you don't have a board to come in and they say, "What's the bottom line? Why aren't
Right.
we selling,
Why
the
aren't
top
you like
weapon in
this
the
game
cash
over
shop?"
here?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
As long, that allows us to perform in areas that other AAA studios cannot do, or just other studios can't really do. And I think it's important for us to lead the charge in that direction and say, look at the reception we're getting. Look at how popular these ideals are. And if you do this, you're going to see success. And hopefully people will see that with this Kickstarter and moving into production. Man, I really want ice cream. Sorry, just drove by the front door. Anyways, I think that's an important aspect of our project, is that we can lead the charge in the direction. I mean, think about this. I don't want to dwell necessarily on the cents and dollars here, but think about this aspect. When you look at other projects that have gone to crowdsourcing, that have gone to Kickstarter, one of their primary hooks in their packages that they offer backers are in some way, shape, or form pay-to-win related. They give an advantage to the players, and that's how they intend to hook people to buy at the $100 package access. In addition to the alpha access and whatever, you're getting pay-to-win items. Our Kickstarter has absolutely no pay-to-win item. There is no item that is gained through a package that gives you, a player, the advantage over another. And one of my, I wouldn't say concerns, but one of my, I guess, is this going to work or not, specifically in regards to how we were presenting the project, was that we don't have any pay to win. And will it be incentive enough to include those cosmetics and show our ideals and presentation?
And will the game be exciting enough for people to invest?
Yes, and it turns out that it was much more than those games that came to market with the pay to win stuff. So I think that really sends a message.
It's a proof of the model.
Yes,
Yeah.
it sends a message that this is what players want.
It's funny that you bring up pay to win, because you did mention it in the video, and it was something that I had written down to touch on later on, but I'll go ahead and jump to it now since you brought it up. Even in there, you did mention advantage. But different people play games for different reasons, and a lot of them view pay to win differently. Like, I don't even think you ask 100 different people what the definition of pay to win is. You're probably going to get you're going to get 100 different definitions of pay to win. So what's the Intrepid Studios definition of pay to win, and what won't backers or future players in a couple years find in the game?
I think that the important thing to note about pay to win is you see a great variety of players when it comes to the MMORPG genre. You see the hardcore 10 hours a day or 12 hours a day, or God forbid, some of them are 20 hours a day, that are playing the game nonstop. You see the people who only have a couple hours a day maybe to play the game when they get home from work, or the people who may log in a couple hours a week or something along those lines. You have a wide spectrum between casual and hardcore players. And pay to win came as a monetization gimmick that studios could use to prey on the casual players that wanted to compete with the hardcore ones, right? And I think that if our game design is sound enough with some of the applications that we have for both casual players and hardcore players to both exercise their agency, will, and effect over the game that they're involved with, and have things to do, that we don't need to rely on pay to win in order to monetize. The subscription model alone, when presenting a continually updated game, a amazing, fun game where people can be on a level playing field and in communities that are both micro and macro, that you're going to see players enjoying that aspect without having to spend the $100, $200 a month that some of these pay-to-win games
or
command.
$600 a month.
Well,
it's unreal.
In my case, when I wanted that bear. Right.
They go whaling and they hook them. They get them.
Yeah.
But so let's go back to your video. You started it off with a little sentence, and it was, an open world an open world non-faction based MMORPG set in a high fantasy world. That's a lot to cram in a single statement, even though it's only maybe 10 words. So let's unpack that a little bit. What do you mean by open world?
No loading time between zones. Just
it's
walking
seamless
from one
open
to
world.
Seamless, yeah. Not
There's
having,
nothing gating you, basically.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so all the zones are interconnected. You can run from one to the other.
Yes.
So it's not necessarily going to be one giant contiguous landmass. There's going to be lakes, rivers, oceans, different continents, possibly.
There'll be terrain. Yeah. Oh, yeah. There'll be terrain markers that kind of separate the regions, obviously, but you won't have to have a load screen when moving through those regions.
Right. Sounds great. So, will this open world be shared by all? Are we looking at like a mega server like ESO? Are we looking at different instance zones, shards? What's the tech like to support this open world?
We're looking at different servers that have their own unique populations and their replicated worlds.
Yeah, so we're not going to have a mega server. We're looking at our population caps right now. Not quite sure exactly where they're going to fall, but that's how we're going to be separating the population. We're probably going to do instancing only in certain dungeons.
Where we want to have a greater narrative appeal and stuff like that.
Right.
Some things. Yeah.
And then in battlegrounds and things like that, arenas and things like that.
Yeah.
You probably won't see instancing too much anywhere else.
No.
What you see is going to be what you get.
Okay, so when you say that it's non-faction based, I envision a world where there isn't a Horde versus our Alliance or Daggerfall Covenant versus all the whatever the rest of them are, because they're terrible. Except Evanheart, they're great. I like them actually.
There's a lot of potential in the game through mechanics and systems that relate to both nodes and organizations and guilds and castles, where you'll see these pseudo-factions maybe come about through player agency. But there's not going to be a hard faction difference now.
Okay,
so there will create their own side.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, so there will be that social glue that bonds them together. It just won't be pre-populated onto them when they're creating their character.
Right, and that might be because of the economy, it might be because of where they call home, it might be because of what organization they're with, it might be because of...
And they're able to choose their own organizations. Even if they chose one, they can move to a different one. Like if they're a citizen of one node, they can move to a different node. If they're in a guild, they can move to a different guild. If they're in an organization, whatever.
And we see these battle lines constantly shifting, so that on day one, the alliances and fights will be different than it will be 2 months down the line.
Correct.
And we want that. We want that kind of shifting battle lines and shifting alliances and shifting, friends and foes.
Right. And who wants to? I mean, for me personally, it was always for faction-based games. Like, I want a different scene every now and then.
Right.
Like, I mean, not everybody wants that for years on end to be a part of the same faction. Maybe they want to move around. And
or you can't do anything about it, right? Like, if I go attack a undead place in, game X, like, I can't really take it down. I can't really do anything to disrupt that alliance, where in our game you can.
And you're being told, like, who's your enemy, and who's your friend. And I may not like my friend, and I may like my enemy.
It opens
I don't
up
want to have to
the door
re-roll
for
my
intrigue
character.
and stuff like that.
Exactly.
Really
Oh yeah, a
keeps it
whole
flexible.
different level.
Yeah.
Political intrigue, that kind of
that
stuff.
you wouldn't find in a faction game because there's no reason to.
Absolutely.
I'm sorry for the Horde. I just had to throw that out there. If you play the Alliance, we just can't talk anymore. No, I'm just kidding. All right, so this isn't a bad thing, but there are more high fantasy games out there that you can shake a stick at. So, whether it's board games, taking it back to pen and paper, there's so many different systems. Some of them have a little bit of what's sameness. How much time was devoted into world building and pre-production that will set Ashes of Creation apart from like Age of Conan, which just happens to be another fantasy MMO that shares the acronym AOC.
We prefer Ashes.
Yeah, we go by Ashes.
Yeah.
You want to take this one?
Okay, so we put a lot of, what differentiates one Elves and Dwarves from somebody else's Elves and Dwarves, right? And it really has to do with the lore, it has to do with how these things are presented, and it also has to do with, like, is it a bad idea to begin with, right? Everybody likes Elves and Dwarves, and everybody likes fantasy for the most part. It's why you see so many games of that nature, because people are just drawn to that kind of, like, you don't necessarily know what's going to happen. So for us, we spent a long time, like, trying to, like, pick out what do people like about dwarves, what things can we do differently, how can we show a different world than has been shown in Lord of the Rings or in D&D or, in every other game that's come out. And so that's what we built our lore around. We've got the 4 base races,
4 parent races, yeah.
and those split into 8 different archetype or 8 different sub-races. And each of them has their own story, their own lore, and their own look. So you can play a dwarf that's kind of traditional, or you can kind of go outside and play a dwarf that's totally non-traditional.
With a ukulele.
With a ukulele. So we're doing some really, I think, interesting things with the sub-races to kind of make things more interesting and more fantastic. You're not going to see the same traditional things that you've seen in other games, even though they're all using similar terms.
Right. I think the important part of why high fantasy, since it's been done so often? Well, it's been done so often because it strikes at a certain part of everyone's heart that's in the MMORPG community, because it brings back memories of that first love you had in the MMORPG genre, and it's an exciting story to tell a tale of a world that exists with these gods and elves and dwarves, whatever, and orcs. We have a lot of extensive story and lore behind the game, because it's a very important part for us here that players know their role in the world. They know what options they have that lie in front of them, and how those options have meaning when they make a choice, and how it reflects on the history of this game and what it's all about.
All right, so what makes your dwarf different than Gimli?
Well, Gimli's good over short distances.
We're not going to talk about that.
All right, so let's dive into the node system then.
I just got that.
I was waiting. I'm like, I thought you did it on purpose.
They're going to be very strong.
All right, so let's dive into the node system, because that's probably, I want to say, from my perspective, one of the most unique systems that you're selling right now for the game. So how does it work with the map? How does it become the focal point that players and then possibly guilds and other social systems build around these nodes?
Well, we've definitely touched a lot on our nodes in the past. And we've released actually 2 parts of a 4-part node series, because it is such an important aspect of the game. It is the backbone of our world's structure. And it's one that allows for players to exercise the most agency over the direction of both their personal narrative and the overarching narrative of the world. Just to give a very brief overview, because we have touched on this before so many times, the nodes are important based on location, and they lock out other nodes as they advance in the world. So it creates a scarcity. It also creates a citizenship system where players will pledge their citizenship to certain nodes, and it won't be a whimsical citizenship that they'll be able to change on the fly. It's something that's going to involve a fairly tangible cooldown period if they want to switch the citizenships. They'll also have to have a home in order to have citizenship. Nodes are going to unlock content that specifically relates to the location and development stage of the node. It's going to be a different feeling for the players. They're going to experience a more linear timeline within the game's story, that you're going to have events and history that is experienced by the player base. If they were present a time ago when this node was fought over and destroyed, or when it was built and they owned a home at the beginning stages of it, and now it's this vast metropolis. It kind of redefines what the players will experience in an MMORPG, to come into a wilderness that is devoid of really any structure outside of what the community creates themselves. And then what can be created can be changed. If they want to experience a storyline that's been seen on another server, but you're fighting a dragon because you're near a mountain, and another server's fighting a kraken because they're near the coast, and you want to fight that kraken because of its drop table if you want to meta it, or because you just want that under your belt to be the server first to take out that kraken, and you have yet to develop the node there. It's incumbent upon you to manifest that in the game.
All right. Well, I did do a little research about the nodes before I came in and asked you the question. I thought that you might be like, yeah, we talked a lot about it, and I totally understand.
It's not me. I could talk all day long about it. It's everyone who's on Twitch.
I get it. So,
they've heard it 100
but I do have an original take on that. So you did mention that nodes are going to be better at certain things from the start, creating a competitive advantage for people to want to move and not be on one side of the world or go to the other or switch allegiances. So whereas, you're looking at it as a competitive advantage, MMO players are like, I want everything. I don't like to share, or if he's got it, I'm jealous, I want it too. So while you're like, that's a competitive advantage, the other person that doesn't have that competitive advantage is like, this is an inherent imbalance in the system. How do you address that crowd that's going to be full of piss and vinegar and be like, well, I can't have it, it's unfair and it's unbalanced?
I mean, players can't have everything.
Right. I think
that's
like, that's the pervasive nature of today's kind of teaching aspect is like, you get an award even if you came in last place. You know what I mean? It's the same. It's like the same thing here. Risk versus opportunity should be a paramount central focus of any system, because it helps you to realize and treasure that reward when you receive it. Right?
Yeah. And in this game, in order to get anything, you have to give something up.
Right.
And that's going to be the case throughout the whole thing. I'm a really strong believer that if you set out a system for players and that system is self-contained and that system is complete, then players will play the game with those rules in mind, right? It's not that we are EverQuest 2, 10 years down the line and everybody wants everything. We're starting out from these base foundations. And I think that once players arrive and see how everything works, figure out what the rules are, I think that they're going to enjoy it. I don't have an answer directly for the competitive advantage part, because that's a core game conceit. Right. I think also, like, as things develop, kind of there's a all ships rise mentality with it, where as things continue to get more complex on the server, everybody's going to have more opportunities. So I don't think that just because one node has a lot, it's going to mean that other players have fewer opportunities.
Right.
I think they're going to have more opportunities.
I think overall I'd push back on the idea that competitive advantage means that someone else is locked out from something, because really it's about someone else or a group of other people choosing to be more efficient at something through the path that they've chosen, right? And it's not necessarily that someone else on the other side of the world that has a different node that's focused on something else can't do that thing. Right. It's just that maybe they're less efficient, and that's how, when we imagine it, that's how the market kind of
Or they're
flows.
doing something totally different.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And sometimes people with competitive advantage in a certain sector, they give up being advantageous in another one.
Right.
And that opens a hole for those people to take advantage of that and move into that space. Another thing is that it's important to note that, as Jeffrey was saying, as a node develops, it's not locking people out from participating in the content there.
Right.
I mean, that's opening content for everyone on the server. Yes, there are mutually exclusive benefits for citizens of that node, but in general, people who are not citizens are still gathering some type of content, interaction, services, ability to explore new parts of the game because of that node being advanced.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, I actually took that when I first read it or listened to it to mean that certain nodes would be able to be developed differently than other nodes, and they would have initially a competitive advantage depending on where they were in the world. So I guess that might have been a misunderstanding on my part, and thanks for clearing that up. However, you did hear Steven say not everybody can have everything, and it's okay, deal with it.
I'm 100% a big promoter of that. I think that when something is kept from you and it is behind a wall of effort and drive and a time sink, that thing that's behind that wall becomes more precious.
No, you're absolutely right. People should be rewarded based upon the effort they put in, and it's the same way in life, and it is that way in games. And if people don't want that in their game, there's plenty of other games they can play that aren't like that. So
that's another great point. Is there's a lot of games out there. We're being very open and honest with what our game's going to feel like, and if you're the type of player who wants to have everything without effort, that's probably not going to be a match.
Yeah, I mean, there's different levels of effort. There's different types of rewards.
Absolutely.
And I don't think any single player, no matter how much effort they're going to put out, is going to have everything.
Right.
I don't think that's just going to be possible.
Even, guild.
And that's part of discovery, part of having a place in the world, part of having your own story is not only what you have, but also what you don't have.
Right.
And I think that's totally fair. And I think that's as long as everybody goes into the game with that expectation in mind, it's going to be fun.
Yes.
Okay, so you mentioned that the world is fresh at the beginning, and the nodes are unadvanced, and you kind of, I don't know exactly how you spawn in the world, but let's say you pop up and you're in this fresh new pasture, and everything's beautiful, and you're wandering around. What's my motivation to set up shop and try and build a house and expand my node as opposed to just being a wanderer and looking around and enjoying the sights?
That's totally possible.
Yeah, you could be a one.
We've played out some of these and kind of game them out. There's a bunch of different types of players, right? And I totally am that guy who, once I log on to Ashes of Creation, if I hadn't been a designer on it, that's what I would do, is I would be trying to find what other people haven't found. And that's probably what I would be doing a lot of my first initial gameplay. For other people, they're going to want to hang out with, other people who are...
That was a big part of the discussion that we had a few months ago.
Yeah.
Remember? We were talking about like the explorative side of, if I don't want to participate in this early settlement development as a new player, can I go out into the world and just explore as a new player?
And the answer is yes.
Absolutely.
Like that's totally should be an achievable thing for people if that's what they want to do. And I think that's a beautiful thing. I think the discovery aspect is the part that I enjoy most out of MMOs. But I understand there's other people too.
And for me personally, I'm more of a civilization builder.
Right.
Like I would love to get into the game and immediately be a part of some community that's building up a node and partake in what all that node has to offer. Whereas you will go off into the wilderness and get eaten by a lion or something. Like, yeah.
And we've really tried to focus on just general player motivations. I mean, we've tried to create a path for all of those different motivations, like the explorer, like kind of the investor civilization beginning, get in early type guy. So we've tried to, run the gauntlet with that idea.
There's a lot of different progression paths as well in the game,
Okay, so...
And also, I guess, sorry to interrupt, but
That's okay.
But for the initial experience, there's going to be kind of a ramp-up time. You're not going to start in the middle of nowhere. You're going to start by one of our portals. And there's going to be kind of a gentle introduction to all of different kind of mechanics that exist in the game in sort of a short form.
Right.
So that you get
Maybe
a feel
a
for
taste
what's
of
happening
everything.
on
Yeah, exactly.
and what things you enjoy and what things you don't enjoy.
Yeah.
So it's not going to be like you're in the middle of a field, but there'll be a little bit of direction at the beginning.
All right, so you mentioned there's different play styles and people like different things. One's a wanderlust, some are happy home builders. What if I'm a happy home builder, I'm improving my node, and I want to build a civilization. I don't want to risk my civilization that I'm spending all this time in being destroyed. Do you have different rule sets for the different servers? Is everything going to be PvP based? How does that work?
Well, everything's not PvP based, but there are no different rules for different servers. There's no PvE server, PvP server.
Okay.
Everything
It just
in the
wouldn't work
game
without a PvE.
Yeah, everything in the game works around some central pillars that we kind of discussed in the Kickstarter video. And one of those pillars, outside of the node pillar, is the meaningful conflict pillar. And that houses the PvP systems that relate to how you can catalyze change in the world. So everything would just become stagnant if you could just build up, everything, and then at some point it would just be,
That's
a
the
stagnant world. When you involve scarcity and you involve conflict, that's when players who have different interests can exercise those interests in the world, and sometimes that may involve what you have built or done, and that's okay. It's okay to do that because, again, that's the risk versus reward relationship. When say, for instance, you've dedicated time towards building a node, and other players have dedicated that equivalent time towards sieging the node, there's going to be a pitched battle between those players, and it's going to be...
Because they both care about what's happening.
Exactly.
Right.
They spend that time doing this because they care passionately about having access to that content, whether it be the siege or the defense, or owning the home. But it is important to note, however, that when you create a homestead, so to speak,
A freehold.
excuse me, I'm sorry. Did I say homestead? Why did I say homestead? Oh my gosh.
Playing too much ESO?
Yeah, right, exactly. When you create a freehold, there's going to be an initial cost assessment for creating that freehold, and then if that freehold gets destroyed, replacing it somewhere else will not involve that initial heavy cost. Because we understand that change is a component in the game and you're going to be seeing these sieges occur, and we understand that may involve losing out on your freehold, you'll be able to place that elsewhere in a new node as a new citizen somewhere.
Okay, so going from the macro down to the micro, I know that my node's going to be at risk, but caravans are also part of the economy too. Let's say that we're out protecting a trade route. Do I have to worry about Joe Schmuckatelli coming up and ganking me in the back and trying to steal what's on my caravan, or is that one of those other risk versus reward type deals?
So he's not going to steal necessarily what's on your caravan, and instead it's going to be, as your caravan moves, and again, we've touched on this before, but I'll go quickly as an overview. As your caravan moves throughout the world, it's going to have a static proximity zone around it that's going to prompt a user with an interface that says attack, defend, or ignore, basically. And players can choose to participate in that caravan grounds as either an attacker or a defender. The caravan itself will have a varying degree of hit points and defense stats and speed and things that players will be able to adjust and customize, as well as hired guards. And they're going to have to destroy that caravan with you defending it first.
Hopefully with your friends.
Hopefully with your friends and or with other defenders. And if they manage to destroy this strong caravan, then there'll be a wreckage there that will have a portion of the goods inside that attackers can partake from. But yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's moving goods around like that en masse, because when we're talking about a caravan, we're talking about a pretty sizable amount of goods. That act should have some weight, and that's part of that. I don't think Joe Schmo singular is going to necessarily be able to gank that.
No, yeah.
You would have to have Joe Schmo and his buddies.
Okay.
And the intention is that this is a group kind of size in skirmish or encounter.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So other than that, are you at risk just basically anytime you're out in the world from other players?
Definitely.
Yeah,
Okay.
so, I mean, we have a flagging mechanic, and
Okay.
the flagging mechanic allows for non-combatants, combatants, and corrupt players.
Okay.
Typically, you're not going to see players likely ganking very often in the sense that they murder you, because the corruption mechanic is a fairly meaty deterrent to that. But you will potentially see players participating in PvP, and I think the flagging mechanic is going to be a healthy system to deterring murder, but incentivizing PvP, and it's obviously a system that we're going to be testing in alphas and betas too. So.
Yeah.
Okay, well, for those that are D&D fans, they'll know the term murder hobo, and sometimes you just have those out there where people want to watch the world burn and kill everything they can. So
I don't
if you
think Murder Hobo is going to have that much success with it. The corruption mechanic is strong enough that if that's all you're doing, you're not going to have a fun time.
Right. So the more corruption you gain, the less effective you become in PvP. And there's going to be a certain period at which point you have gained enough corruption that you're going to be gearless, and you're also going to have like a massive reduction in your PvP efficacy.
For you to want to murder Hobo, you're going to you're going to need to get something out of it, right? And for the most part, if I go and kill Steve, I'm not going to really gain a lot out of it to really offset the risk that corruption entails.
Why you got to kill me?
Just as an example,
Unbelievable.
Not saying there's anything.
Don't bother coming to work tomorrow.
I think we want to call HR on that one.
The intention is that the risk has to be worth the reward, right? So if I'm going to go kill somebody randomly, that's probably not going to be enough for me. There's got to be something at stake there for that to be meaningful for me. And so I think that's how we're disincentivizing the murder hobo for the most part.
Yeah.
Okay.
Not to say that's not going to happen, but
All right, I think with the time constraints, we got time for one more, and I want to shift this down from. Yeah, it happens. Go from again macro, keep it on a micro level. We talked about the nodes and the building of the civilizations. Let's get down to like crafting on an individual level. What is there available? Like I'm looking right now at a ranger who's got a bow and a cloak and all that stuff. Is that all going to be able to be made by me?
Well, it depends on how much you invest in your artisan class.
Yeah, it'll either be made by you or another crafter.
You will not have the ability to make everything.
Yeah.
You will have to focus within certain professions of certain paths in the artisan tree, and you'll need to rely on gatherers, processors, and item creators. Whichever one you've decided to go down, you're going to have to rely on the other two in order to bring about a full-fledged item, so to speak.
Okay, so you're not going to be it's not going to be one size fits all where I go out, gather it all, I come back, I smelt it all, I craft it all, and then I get to wear it.
Right. No, there's going to be a dependency on other players and the direction that they've gone in and the role of their artisan class. It's kind of like taking the classic Trinity system of adventuring classes and moving it over into an artisan tree that kind of has a dependency on different roles within that crafting system.
You said Trinity, so I gotta. We're gonna make two questions then. Is Trinity there in the PvE portion of the game?
So, not in a traditional sense of what a
Okay.
Trinity is for the adventuring class. There are obviously going to be roles, and there's going to be dials on your class of customization that can make that role split higher, and you have customization over where your character lands in that tree. But will you need
A tank, healer, and DPS.
right, exactly, and to a sense,
Yeah.
I mean, yes, you
Yeah.
will, but
We're pretty much designing towards that.
right.
But
not in the traditional sense, right.
Yeah.
With our secondary class system and being able to incorporate flavors of the different archetypes, you're going to be able to take a non-traditional DPS and maybe move it into a tank sector, or maybe move it into kind of a self-heal sector, or something along those lines.
Yeah.
But
we want people to build parties like they build their character, where there are interesting combinations to be had. We don't necessarily know what all those combinations will be.
right,
Do you have a
But,
constraint on the size yet? Have you figured out what the party size will be?
We're looking at 8,
Yeah.
but that may change. So it's something that is still fairly firm, but not totally solid.
I mean, a lot of this, we plan to heavily utilize our testing phases of alphas and betas to bring a lot of these design discussions into a working environment and see exactly how they feel.
Yeah, the players who get into our alphas and betas will probably see some weird stuff, so we're kind of excited.
All right. Well, thanks for having me on to pepper you guys with a bunch of questions for the last 45, 50
Thanks
minutes.
for being here, man.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for coming and joining us, Robert. We really appreciate it. You had awesome questions.
You're welcome, and the best of luck to you guys and the rest of your campaign, and I hope you guys get all the money you need.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. We
Appreciate
do
it.
too.
Take care, Robert.
Bye.
Take care.
All right. So we have some questions from the community.
All right, everybody. I hope you enjoyed that interview. If you want some more information, make sure to hop over to their Twitch/TV, Ashes of Creation, and they're doing some Q&A with the community right now, and you guys can take a look at that. Thanks.